Good evening, Cedar Falls, and welcome to our regular City Council meeting for Monday, December 20th, 2021, and our final meeting for 2021. I'll now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Dara.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from
So moved.
December 6th?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That does pass. So it brings us to agenda revisions. Do we have any, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have one agenda revision, Mr. Mayor. Item 26 on the resolution calendar is being removed tonight.
Okay, so that's resolution setting May 3rd, 2022 as the date of the public hearing on the proposed FY22, FY27 capital improvements program. And I understand that will be at the next meeting, so January 18th, we'll have that discussion and public hearing. So that's 26. And if no other revisions, then that'll take us over into public forum, where speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics germane to city business. Does anyone from the gallery wish to speak tonight? Ms. Beach, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Good evening, Rosemary Beach, 5018 Sage Road, and happy holidays, you people up there in front. I'm just here tonight to just try and keep a little interest going on the Searly building up on the UNI campus, and the fact that it has been looked at by the regents that to be torn down, especially that building. And that we had a nice article that was written, and it's the article that brings me here tonight, because when I read the end of it, it says, I believe that our mayor has gone up and talked to President Nook, and they had a nice conversation, and evidently came back and was decided that our Preservation Commission could not send in a Preservation Iowa, which is an announcement to the Iowa people that there are places that are in dire necessity to try to save. It's for the most endangered properties. So with that happening, I got a little bit more thought process that there needs to be information out about this building, especially the other one also. But it's hard to get it out and hard to people for understanding it. One of the things I find, and it is called the Honors Building, but it's really Homer Searly's home. It was built for him as the president of the university. And he was a long person in that job. He died while he was in that house after he had resigned from being president of the university, well, it was ISTC. And so he was an important person. He himself was an important person. It was built for that person. You have Searly Park, you have Searly Boulevard, you have the old library building is the Searly building, and we've commemorated that. And it just kind of boggles my mind that the university is going to celebrate its 150th birthday, and they're going to tear down one of the most influential people's houses that they built. And I can't understand that. I was on the original Preservation Commission, and I know that a lot of people don't understand the whole idea of preservation commissions, and the group has managed to save some things, and I think that's completely wonderful. I'd like to have our city involved in it, and I can't say that it's not a good thing that you talked to Dr. Hanuk that our mayor did, but I think it would have been nice if there had been a preservation person within that conversation to give their ideas on why they think it's important to save that kind of heritage. The people of Cedar Falls put that university there by having the orphans home, by us going to the state and asking for a teacher's college. It is part of Cedar Falls and what we do. So I just come back to say that again. And the other thing that worries me a little bit about it is, and I think our mayor, when he decided to run for this, the party's in now for the years he's going to be mayor, announced that he would be going back to UNI. And so I would think that he would understand maybe a little bit better about how I personally feel about it, and I hope the rest of the community does. And I come here to talk about it because this should go out to all the community and they be involved. So with saying that, since Preservation Iowa can't send in the information about the building and about the demolition, I'm going to send it in. So they will get the information. Any person can send it in. So any one of you can get the information and print it out and send it down to them as one of the most endangered buildings in Iowa. So thank you. Have a happy holiday.
Thank you, Ms. Beach. Just for clarification, that meeting was not with Dr. Nook. It was with Michael Hager and Andrew Morse, who were the Vice President for Operations and the Chief of Staff, just for the record.
But isn't it in the newspaper you went to talk to Dr. Nook?
I'm just giving the I was there.
I mean, I don't want you to think I made it up.
But just for the point of record, and thank you. You can have a seat. And also, just to be clear, as mayor, my role is as the city's mayor, and my relationship with you and I has no bearing on it, and I will always, in this role, treat the city first. So I want to make that clear as well. So anyone else wish to speak in public comment tonight from the gallery? Seeing none, any from Zoom tonight?
We have no attendees at Zoom.
Okay, thank you. So I will consider the public hearing closed here, or the public forum closed, and bring us over to a special order of business, which is item number 2, public hearing on a proposed ordinance establishing new boundaries for wards and precincts as a result of the 2020 census. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication of notice of hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that passes and brings us to Madam Clerk. Do we have any written communications filed?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Moving over to staff comments, Part C, we have GIS specialist, so Geographic Information Systems Specialist Corey Hines, to give us information on these maps which he generated. So the floor is yours, Mr. Hines.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you guys for letting me at least come here and provide you guys with hopefully an understanding of some of the questions that you guys may have. It's kind of going up. So my plan for tonight is to kind of go back through and just give you a abbreviated timeline of kind of the things that got us to where we're at right now. Provide a little bit of historical reference and background. And then we're going to get into what we're required to do by the state code and the process that we used here to establish the 3 options that we're going to have in front of you guys. And then provide you with my recommendation and then kind of some next steps on where we're at right now with the timeline. So this only goes back to about April, but just for everyone's clarification, the reason that we're doing this is because of the 2020 census, Cedar Falls grew by about 1,450 people, which is a good thing, obviously. We had growth where a lot of cities in Iowa did not have any growth or actually lost population. But that was the trigger that produced that. And then, of course, things were delayed. The federal government has to do their apportionment. The state has to do theirs, on down the line. So you'll probably remember on November 4th, the governor officially signed the new legislative boundaries into law, which then started our timeline and the county's timeline for that matter. We had 60 days from that point to get the maps to the Secretary of State. So just a little background. In a previous employment, I have done this, quite a few times. If you'll recall, in 2005, Cedar Rapids voters voted to go to a new form of government from the old commission style. I was directly involved with that and presented those to the Cedar Rapids City Council. A couple years later, Lynn County decided they were going to go from 3 districts or 3 supervisors at large to 5 by districts. So I was involved with that process and was did the presentation for that. And then we just turned around right in 2011 and had to do it again after the 2010 census. In addition, I would say I look back at 2011, I look back at 2001, and the city of Cedar Falls actually did something very similar. They kind of came and presented one thing, and then they had, kind of an abbreviated, truncated timeline. Different months, of course. It was August, but it was, basically the same process in the past. So state requirements for precincts. This is what we can do. They have to lie within one legislative district. Hence why we had to wait for the state to get done. We have to know where that line's at. We have to know that there's rules that follow. Second thing, we have to have them composed of contiguous territories, so they can't have donut holes in them. There can't be a 2-part thing where you've got one over here, and another one in the middle. They have to follow the census block boundaries, which, for those that maybe just aren't aware, the census sets those boundaries. They just give them to us in a map file. We can't split them. We can't change them. They are what they are. They don't line up with what we consider to be blocks sometimes, but that's what we get. They also must promote the electoral efficiency and convenience. They have to be easy to describe and follow. And we're in the unfortunate category where we have to include annexed territory after January 1 of 2020. Moving on to wards. So wards they have much tighter tolerances. They have to follow the precinct boundaries, of course, but they also got to be contiguous. They have to be compact as possible, so no irregular shapes. But the other thing about them is the numbers have to be very tight. So the maximum allowable variation is less than 10%. So if you take the 40,713 that Cedar Falls official population was for 2020 and divide it by 5 to get your ideal ward population, 10% of that, I can't take my least populous ward and my most populous ward from a plan. They cannot differ by more than 814 people. So just to explain that a little bit. But here's what I can't do. I cannot have a precinct over 3,500 people. I cannot use the incumbents' addresses. I cannot use any political affiliation. I cannot use any past or present election results. I can use numbers from the census and only the census demographic. No demographics, so no race, no anything, just head counts. So obviously this year, we might as well just continue 2020 into 2021 because it seems like everything that was supposed to happen then has, kind of kicked everything down the road. So I went back and looked in previous years. These dates aren't exact for every time, not in 11 and 10 and 01 and 91, but in general, this process is 2 to 3 months less than we normally get to do this whole thing. So that's why this compressed timeline has been a big challenge. I mentioned it before, the census gives us the census blocks. So here's an example of one that's one census block. It goes around 2 other blocks, it kind of cuts around other areas, but there's nothing we can do about it. Here's just another example of kind of some of those irregular ones. The legislative boundary. When you look at it, you're like, I don't know why they did that, but there was a reason. I can't do anything about it, but I can split a ward across these boundaries, but I have to be very careful because if I do so, I have to go far enough where I can grab enough people that on the other side of that boundary, I'm not leaving more than 7,000 people to divide 2 more precincts because I can't go over the 3,500 number. So, and really, I don't really want to even get close to that 3,500 number. So there's been, quite a bit of movement. I mentioned in my memo to you guys that with the 2010 boundaries and the 2020 census numbers, we had a discrepancy of, if you just left them as is, a little over 10,000 and a little under 7,000. And that's, like I said, it's almost 4 times what I'm allowed to do in variation for wards. So it's just, it seemed like there was a lot more movement in these last 10 years than there was in the previous years. But regardless. And then I would just kind of add that, every time you kind of went to go and try to come up with a good plan that fit the rules that is set up by the state, you get halfway through it and you'd have to back out. You'd get 3/4 of the way through it and back out. So, I mean, if I was a batter, I'd be horrible. I would be sent back down to the, single A level or something. So, our process here was, I know that legislative boundary can't move. I have to know where that's at pretty much all the time, because you come up against it, you can either come short of it or you go over it, or you go right up to it, and that's the only way to get through it. So I kind of started with that, and then I know that the words are a much tighter tolerance. I know that those numbers have to match, because the Secretary of State flat out says right in the documents that they give us for guidance that anything over that variation is going to get rejected. So we don't want to have to do this again. We don't have to come back to you guys with another plan. We don't have to do anything like that. And then last, but I guess not least, before we're at where we are here, I have to allow the county auditor 7 to 10 days per code to review the plans. And that's because if they have any suggestions, or if they have any things that they want you to do, and you as a council say, nope, we're going to do what we want, we're Cedar Falls, we don't care, that has to be in writing in the ordinance. It can't just be discussed at a meeting here. It has to be written in why we didn't follow their orders, or why we didn't follow their suggestions. So that's why we have to do that part too. So combine all that together, you get to the point where you start building these things, and you're looking at things that, it just has to make sense. I'm trying to make these things compact while still meeting the maximum, variation. And, from a map guy perspective, like I am, I have to write these things. I had to write, the description of these things out. They should be easy to follow. They should be, there shouldn't be any issue with, like, well, I'm not sure I really understand where that's going. So that's where, the criteria for all of them is all within the code. It's just a matter of how much, variation are we going to get when it comes down to it. Option B, same criteria. The variation's a little bit higher, and, from my perspective, not as easy to describe. There's kind of some jogs here and there within, the natural boundaries of the city and the legislative boundary, which you can't change. And then C was, I guess, kind of a continuation of B. It just kind of got a little bit more. But again, all the criteria for all of them is within the state code, but to different varying degrees. So that's where we get to option A. It would be the one with the least variation between the wards. It is the most compact, easiest to describe. Additionally, when I got feedback from the auditor, they also said basically the same things that we already, that I'm saying right here. It was the, one that they recommended above all three. So next steps. Tonight would be the night if you want to, you would want to suspend the rules, and we have an extremely tight timeline. January 3rd to submit is going to be too late. The state is going to be bombarded with these plans from now until, January 3rd. In addition, the county still has to do all of their work for us, Waterloo, and everybody else that's going to be submitting their stuff to them. I can bring up the maps. I've got them sitting over here if anybody would like to talk about one individually, but with that, I'm finished, and I can take any questions that you guys have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
And before we go to the council questions and deliberation, we have a period open for public comments. So if anyone from the gallery would like to speak from the public on this item, you're welcome to do so now. Yes, Ms. Smith, come forward, please. Name and address for the record, please.
Whitney Smith. I live on Hawthorne Drive in Cedar Falls. I just have a question, like, how is this going to affect counselors' terms? So those who were just elected, are they guaranteed their 4 years? Is somebody who's up for election in 2 years, or, I'm sorry, is it next year? No, in 2 years. If they're put into a ward that was just decided, are they then up for re-election again? Or are they going to have a 6-year term? How does that work? I guess that's my biggest concern and question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And we will answer that when we get into the past public comment. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak from the gallery? Okay, and none on Zoom. So, yeah, I think this could be an appropriate time to ask for Mr. Rogers, or would you be the best person to ask about that? For what happens then to council members whose wards change on them?
There is some discussion underway right now from the auditors, and so we're looking into that. We don't have any definitive answers, but for purposes of tonight, that would be considering where incumbents live, and so that wouldn't be appropriate for our consideration this evening. But people are asking that. It's a reasonable question, and we don't have concrete answers yet. There are some Attorney General opinions out there that I can share with council, but for tonight's purposes, we may have to put a pin in that and come back to
Sure,
it.
that makes sense. Okay. So if no other public questions or comments, then I will consider the public hearing closed and bring us over to Part 2E, which is, I would ask for council consideration on this. Since we have 3 maps before us, potentially, I would like to add on or have council tack on to the back where it says, passing the ordinance to become effective January 15th, 2022. I would like to add on using map, either A, B, or C, to lead the discussion. And then, once you've had the discussion, if you decide that that original map that you had mentioned, if that's not the one you want to go with, then we would have to vote that down and then go to giving the motion with another map. Now, that's the cleanest way to do this. And it's unusual because we don't usually have 3 options before us. So with that, is there a motion to pass ordinance amending Chapter 8 elections of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing new boundaries for wards and precincts within the city of Cedar Falls to become effective January 2022 upon its first consideration? Is there a motion with a map number or map letter?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Yes.
make a motion to do what you just said with map C.
With map C, okay. So is there a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded, open for discussion about map C, and then also we can add in discussion of the comparing that merits to other maps as well. If you like, or we just vote. So, yes, Councilmember DeBoer.
Well, one of the things Corey mentioned was electoral convenience and efficiency. So does that take into account where the precincts are for each of the different wards being changed and the public happen to change where they vote?
So that's part of why I send it to the county auditor to check it. And if they have any suggestions, they let me know, so.
Okay, so I know that none of the voting precincts are marked on the map, on any of the maps.
No,
But from looking at it, wouldn't a lot of them need to be changed? And how difficult of a process is that?
That's up to the county auditor, honestly. And when I got their feedback, I mean, they didn't mention anything about having to change anything, and they just gave me their rundown of, their opinion, so, yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
so
Councilmember.
when we got our council packet last week, before I even looked far enough to see what the staff's recommendation was, I just did the simple math of the numbers and tried to figure out which one it was the closest, and obviously, we've just confirmed that A is the most even, right? Is that a good way to say it?
Sure.
C was, when I kind of wrote, I mean, C was the worst of the three. So my biggest concern is that it's even. I mean, I would think that with voting, we should want even numbered wards as much as we can. So if we're going on that logic, A is the way to go. So I guess what I'm saying is C would be my least of the three.
And is it correct, for Mr. Hines, that that was the primary motivator for the recommendation, was that it was the most balanced between the wards?
I keep picking this up. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously one of the main criterias, and do you want to be pushing that 10% number? No, not really. I mean, you can't forecast what's going to happen in the next 10 years. All you can do is say, this is the numbers I got for 2020, and this is how I've got to, lay it out and try to make it as balanced. I think probably what you're looking, balance is what you were probably looking for, is the word, so, yep.
Okay, so you're saying we're looking for potential population shift in the next 10 years, and so this gets us to where, like, what's logical now?
And that's what it is, like a snapshot in time. I mean, we know we're going to grow, but we don't, yeah, we know, approximately, but we can't predict it, right? I mean, I don't know if anybody would have, predicted 10 years ago where we're going to be right now, but so that's the idea, is that you have to make it balanced. So yeah, when I'm looking at, how far over or under I am when I'm building these plans, I want to stay as close to that number as possible while still making them make sense and not, oh, I guess I got to get, 20 more people into this one. So I go across the road and pull in, another block. And it's like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially from a voter convenience or efficiency standpoint. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Councilor Harding.
If we selected another map, C or B, other than A, was there any feedback from the auditor, or the county, I mean, on what their thoughts were? Would they send back changes they requested and we would have to put it in right? What did they say about the other options?
Sure.
Obviously, they recommended A.
Yeah, I mean, and they said, essentially what I was kind of getting at was, they're basically that's the most contiguous one. It was the least variation. They stopped short of saying that, they didn't think that one was better than the other, or not that one was better, but that one of them or two of them were not acceptable. They just said, this is what we would do, so. For what it's worth.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Cruz.
So I have to throw my analytics at it like I always do. And percentages and numbered variations, I mean, A had a large variance in one of the wards from the ideal number, as do all of them. So I didn't see that much of a difference, maybe within 100 people, voters, in one ward versus another, one ward versus another. So then I kind of look at the intangibles. I know all of these pass the scrutiny of the auditor. They're all within the 10% limits and that sort of thing. But then I look at something like the least amount of change for our citizens and the least amount of changes for the precincts and the voting spots, and that's an intangible. It's not listed, it's not prohibited. So that's where I zeroed in on map C being the most logical for the citizens. I even had a couple calls from people concerned about precincts changing and that sort of thing. So for the continuity of governance, map C seems to have the best fit. It fits all the other criteria and plus the intangibles.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Councilmember DePere, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, I just was confused with what Corey just said, but basically, A, B, and C have all been approved by the auditor? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought only A had been approved so far that they hadn't even seen B.
Oh, no, I wanted to make sure that if we came to you guys, that whichever one happened, that they were okay with that, because otherwise I'd have to come back to you guys and you'd have to put it back, you'd have to write it back into the ordinance, or I guess I would have to write back in the ordinance, why, after you guys had, had this meeting, so. Oh, yeah, I made sure that that was all done.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah, so they've all been approved, and we're looking at which one basically is the most convenient for the public.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, I have one mea culpa here. I saw on here, there's the aspect of suspending the rules. And so normally what would happen is you would have that as part of the original motion. So I think procedurally, I would need to request that that the original motion be withdrawn. And Kevin, give me a death stare if I'm offline here. We would need to, if I could entertain withdrawing the motion and then bringing it forward with a motion to suspend the rules and then pass C, map C on its third and final consideration. Does that sound correct?
You could do it either way. That you could pass it on first consideration and then take a motion to waive the rules for the second and third readings if you wish.
Okay, that's cleaner. We'll just go that route. Thanks. Trying to make sure I'm not missing any legal steps here. So with that, if I don't see any other discussion or questions from council, anything, Councilmember Harding? Nope.
Trying to think really hard. I guess a question for staff is what's the big advantage, the big advantage for having the precincts at what was map A? It was like a 6 something variance, right?
Yeah, sorry, they were, in the memo, they were just a little bit different. It was 7%.
7%.
Yeah.
So what's the I guess what I'm weighing, as I'm thinking and looking at the maps and I was studying it, the variance of 7% to 9%, what's the benefit of that over what Daryl suggests as a map in C that it has 2% more variance, but it is more similar to what we currently have, and that's kind of like my dilemma where I'm at. What's the big benefit for the 2% less? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that I can even answer that. I mean, I've got to follow the rules that the state sets out, and
That makes sense.
I don't want to, that'd be an opinion, I guess, but I mean, I've kind of told you what I think is, the best option, but, you guys as a council have to decide, right? So.
Councilmember Cruz?
I was just going to say that the percentage doesn't make that much difference because each ward has different candidates. If it was all the same candidate, then maybe the percentage might make a difference, but you've got 5 different wards, 5 different candidates. They're staggered when they're elected. So these percentages on 40,000 people, almost 41, is like 100 people spread out.
It's within tolerances.
Yeah, it's within tolerance anyway, so that doesn't sway. I want to say in the analytics of it, it's within the tolerance already, so a 2% difference doesn't arise a problem.
Any other thoughts on this?
I have just a
I'll
question.
take a vote. Yes.
Why didn't they let you consider where the populace votes at, the locations, so that we would know which one of these options gives the least disruption to the public?
Myself, I don't know where those are, and that's kind of why I sent them to the auditor to make sure that, he was okay with it and his election manager was okay with it. So, and they did, they reviewed them all within a couple days, which was great. So I thank them for getting back to me so quick, but that's kind of one of the pieces of these things that I have to defer to them and say, you guys make sure that this is okay with,
Yeah, I get that they're all telling you which one's okay, but they didn't give you any idea which one creates the least amount of disruption for the public, because it looks like a large amount of the populace of Cedar Falls is going to have to change where they vote. And yet,
So-
you had 1,000 people difference.
Sure, and I don't think I'm a little out of bounds here, but I mean, I used to work for an auditor. I worked for the Lynn County Auditor for, 10 years. And where people vote, it changes constantly. I mean, we were never really concerned. We were just trying to find a place that was, available, honestly. So there's tools and there's apps and there's everything else that all you got to do is punch in your address and it can tell you where you're going to vote. So whether it's school or, general election or whatever. So, but just my past experience on that. So.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Dunn.
I'm going to probably repeat myself, but I feel like when we're talking about voting and representation, balance does matter, even if it is just a few hundred people. I mean, elections get decided on less than 100 people. And as far as, I appreciate the concern of people needing to change where they vote, because I get that, and that causes confusion. But in the end, I think anybody that's concerned with voting rights, again, balance to me is the most important part of voting rights. So although I know it's maybe just a small percentage and analytics might say something, but I feel like in this vote, balance is incredibly important. And, in 10 years, we're going to be doing this again. I mean, it should be the council's goal to always have balance in the wards.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments? Seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded. Let me make sure I read it correctly here. Motion and seconded to pass ordinance amending Chapter 8 elections of the Code of Ordinances relative to establishing new boundaries for wards and precincts within the city of Cedar Falls to become effective January 15th, 2022, using Map C upon its first consideration. Motion and seconded and requires a roll call vote for Map C.
4 voting aye, 3 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that does pass. And that takes us to the second part, which will say, is it a roll call vote to suspend the rules then?
Yes.
As well? Okay, so make sure I get this right. Is there a motion to suspend the rules and suspend the rules requiring ordinances to be considered at 3 separate meetings and instead pass the ordinance upon its third and final consideration? This would require 6 aye votes, just to be clear.
So
It's been motioned.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion on suspending the rules? Okay, yes, Councilor Dwyer.
Understanding your deadline, you said it has to be in by January 3rd. So our next meeting is January 3rd. So we can't just email, if we had the second reading and third reading on January 3rd, if we suspended the rules on that date, can they not be emailed in before midnight?
They can, but it'd be pushing it, obviously. I mean, we don't really want to come right up against that deadline. There's still stuff that I have to have the mayor, do prior to submitting, because it does require someone, that's a representative of the city to do. So I'll still have to fill out, there's precinct worksheets that we have to submit and stuff, but.
Okay, so there's still additional
yeah.
work you have to do after.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, obviously, but I mean, I just would hate to have it, something would happen. I mean, you just never know. Even though we can submit it digitally, it's not always foolproof. So, yeah,
And then one other question: if we are late, what were the penalties?
So they don't spell out what those penalties are, but basically what they tell you is that if you submit it and there's something that is wrong with it, then their staff has to correct it and then send it back, and then you're incurred whatever that time is for them. I don't know the rate.
You mean they would bill you for their time?
Yeah, basically.
And then if they make any changes, we're stuck with the changes they make.
Correct. Yeah, to bring it into compliance, but, we can try to avoid all that by, doing it so that we've got some time, and if there is any feedback from them, then, it should be minor, I would think, but, yeah.
Yes, Councilor.
So then you're saying we could correct it by January 3rd?
But we'd also have to, if there was changes that need to be made, there needs to be a public notice that gets put out. There would be lead time for
Okay.
all that, so yeah. And they're getting submissions, I don't know how many a day, but on every Zoom call that we've had with their people, they're, urging us to do this and get it done, so, yeah.
Well, this is one other question, if I may. Because I always hate suspending rules unless I have really no other choice. But if we pass this on the second and third reading tonight, and there is some public outcry against it, do we have the option or ability to come back to if the public is asking for changes? Are we pretty well stuck after that, unless the auditor changes it?
I'm not sure.
I'll jump in
Tough one.
here. So, it passed on second and third readings. That means that the ordinance has been passed by council. Unless the mayor vetoes, then it'll go into effect upon publication.
And I've got 14 days to do that. That'd give us some time. I'd be willing to hold on to it if we hear anything.
I think it'd be more the domino effect. You know, I'm going to submit this to the county. They're going to turn around and it's kind of stupid. So even though that we've got our piece done, they have to submit us, Waterloo, whoever else has got wards, precincts, districts, all that stuff. They have to then take all that and then submit it also to the state. So it's kind of a domino effect of us causing a problem for them, and yeah.
Okay, so we are still protected, it sounds like, a little bit, to hear from the public if needed.
Maybe a week, yeah. Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Miller.
I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Hines for doing this and leaving the politics out and following the rules. It certainly appears that you did that, and I kind of felt like you were on trial there for your history and what you're doing here, but I appreciate the work.
It's all right. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, each map is a massive puzzle, and then you have to do 2 additional massive puzzles.
Yeah, there was some audible cussing in my office when when I get to a certain point, and then I couldn't get one, and I hope nobody was listening, but.
I didn't hear it from my office.
Okay, well, good.
Probably okay.
It's just practice, just keep practicing.
I keep telling my kids.
Okay, so the motion on the floor.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Excuse me.
Councilmember.
I'm not in favor of suspending the rules. The reason we have 3 readings is to give the public time to come in if they have a problem. We can easily have the second and third reading on the next council meeting. There will be a couple of new council people. Even though I'm on the 4-3 winning side of this, I would like to see at least another reading. So I think it's always worrisome to suspend those rules. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to suspend the rules and approve this ordinance change at this reading requiring
Mr. Mayor?
6 aye votes. Yes.
At one point, you or someone had mentioned a special session to do a second and third reading, if need be.
That is a possibility.
If that's depending the outcome of this vote here. Is that right?
So, yes. So if there was a council desired it over the holiday break, if you would want to have a special meeting before the third, well, actually, if it's a public hearing, does that still apply? Do we need to have a notification for that special meeting?
Not for the second reading.
Okay, so, good. So that is a possibility.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so motion and seconded for suspending the rules and approving this on the third and final consideration. And no other comments? And anything, actually, I didn't ask for the public, anything from the public on this one for comment? Yes. Okay. Please, now I'm curious. But actually, come forward because we need you on the mic. See, we heard on Channel 15.
Just an idea for solution. I know a lot of you guys aren't in favor of A, and I'm not either, but looking at it, like, what if you guys move the ward numbers? So the precincts and everything in there stay the same, but maybe Ward 5 kind of goes to where that person actually is, like, now. Does that make sense? Because I noticed, like, Susan DeBurr is going to be in a different ward. Ward 5 is going to be, Dustin Ganfield would be living in a different ward. But if those numbers were switched around, does that change it? So on the map, all the precincts stay the same, but what's designated as Ward 1 could be Ward 2 instead.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, point of order. Aren't we not supposed to take that into account? Didn't we just get told that that's not supposed to be into account according to
It's
state
not,
rules?
but it would help with upcoming election ideas. I don't know. And having the person who represents you living in your ward and actually representing you. I don't know. Just trying to throw out a solution.
Thank you. Well, the old overarching is that we have to go with the map as it's written. We can't, it's not really appropriate to do amendments at this point. So with that, and also, yeah, to the points well taken from Councilmember Dunn about considering the actual elected officials in place. So with that, it's been motioned to suspend the rules and approve this at this meeting on third and final consideration with 6 aye votes required. So requires a roll call vote.
Six voting aye, one voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so the vote is to suspend the rules, and so that does pass on third and final consideration. But just as we talked about earlier, I will keep it on my desk for several days. I'm not going to sign it right away. If there are public concerns or problems, please reach out to me and to the council members. You can email me at mayor@cedarfalls.com. You can also express any concerns to Cedar Falls at City Council at cedarfalls.com, all one word, and that will go to all the council members. So certainly interested if there's input or questions or concerns. If I receive that, I'll bring that to the council. Otherwise, I will sign it so it can move forward to the state. So with that, that's new business, and now going over to old business, we have,
Excuse me,
oh,
Mayor.
you're right, item 3, we have to do that first. So item 3 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a letter of agreement with the Blackhawk County Supervisors relative to establishing a joint precinct consisting of a portion of Cedar Falls Ward 2 and Precinct 3 and a portion of Cedar Falls Township Precinct. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open it for council, or Mr. Hines, if you want to discuss, or will,
Sorry, I was just going to say that this is just because we annexed property after January 1st. It affects less than 10 people, and the state requires us to have a joint precinct because the existing boundary as it was in 2020, or prior to 2020, is a house district boundary, and we crossed that. So it's just a formality that they're the ones that kind of drafted this, and we're just getting it through our council's approval. So,
yep, great, thank you. So any questions from council? Any from the public on this item 3? Seeing none, it's been motioned and seconded to approve and authorize execution of a letter of agreement with Blackhawk County Supervisors for the joint precinct consisting of a portion of Cedar Falls Ward 2 Precinct 3 and a portion of Cedar Falls Township project. Motion and seconded, and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Heading over to old business now, number 4 is passing ordinance 3000, granting a partial property tax exemption to the Vault LLC for construction of a an office facility at 6100 Production Drive upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve? Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Public? Seeing none, then it requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 5 is passing ordinance 3001, amending Chapter 24 Utilities of the Code of Ordinances relative to sanitary sewer rates upon its third and final consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Again, council discussion. Any? Or from the gallery? Seeing none, then motion and seconded, and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us to 6, which is passing ordinance 3002, amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to reestablishing the downtown Cedar Falls Self-Supported Municipal Improvement District upon its second consideration.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So with that item, it will be back up again on our January 3rd meeting for its final consideration. At that point, it will become an ordinance if it's approved. So moving us over into new business, we have our consent calendar. These items will be acted upon by a voice vote in a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or the public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member request to pull an item 7 through 9? Seeing none. Any from the gallery wish to pull 7 through 9? Also seeing none. So I will read those items. Item 7 is receiving and filing the Committee of the Whole minutes for December 6th relative to the Gross Cedar Valley update. Item 8 is receiving and filing abstract of votes for the November 2nd, 2021 municipal election and the November 30th, 2021 municipal runoff election. And then finally, item 9 is approving applications for liquor licenses. Is there a motion to approve these items?
So moved.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, these do pass then, and that takes us over to our resolution calendar, where these items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or the public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member request to pull an item from 10 through 27, knowing that item 26 is no longer on the agenda?
25.
25, okay. Any others from council? Seeing none. Does anyone from the gallery wish to pull an item from 10 through 27? Okay, seeing none, then we will pull item 25, and I'll just briefly read these others. So item 10 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an opioid allocation memorandum of understanding. 11 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a contract with Office Express / Office Products. Item 12 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of 14 leases relative to properties vacated by the flood buyout program of 2008. 13 is a resolution approving a College Hill Neighborhood Overlay Zoning District site plan for facade and signage improvements at 2019 College Street. Item 14 is a resolution approving and authorizing submission of an application to the Department of Commerce, IDEA, an American Rescue Travel Plan Act, Tourism, Outdoor Recreation, and Funding Opportunity for the Cedar River Recreational River Area, and designating me as the official representative of the city so I can sign said application and certain assurances in conjunction with the same. Item 15 is a resolution approving commitment of local funding in conjunction with the Department of Commerce, IEDA, and disaster relative grant for the in-stream and upland improvements of Phase 1 to the Cedar River Recreational Area and Riverbank Improvements Project. 16 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an MOU with Intercog for administration of a grant for the Cedar River Recreational Area and Riverbank Improvements Project. Item 17 is a resolution authorizing submission of a grant application for Homeland Security for a brick scoping project relative to the Stormwater Master Plan and designating me as the official representative of the city. 18 is a resolution approving the commitment of local funding in conjunction with the U.S. Emergency Management Agency Building Resistant Infrastructure and Communities scoping project relative to the Stormwater Plan. 19 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of MOU with Intercog for the brick scoping project grant relative to a Stormwater Master Plan. 20 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a extension of a yard waste management service agreement with T&W Grinding for the compost facility. 21 is a resolution approving the certificate of completion and accepting the work of Aztec for the 2020 Seal Coat project and authorizing transfer of funds to the Street Repair Fund. 22 is a resolution approving the certificate of completion and accepting the work of Blacktop Service Company for the 2021 Seal Coat project, and also authorizing transfer of funds to the Street Repair project from the Street Construction Fund. 23 is a resolution approving and accepting the contract and bond of Peterson Contractors for the Green Hill Road and South Main Street intersection improvement project. 24 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of owner purchase agreement and a temporary construction easement in conjunction with the Green Hill Road and South Main intersection improvements project. We're skipping 25 for now. 27 is a resolution setting January 18th, 2022 as the date of a public hearing on a proposal to undertake a public improvement project for the Main Street reconstruction project and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project. Is there a motion to approve these items minus 25?
Second.
Motion and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us over to 25, which is resolution approving and authorizing execution of a professional service agreement with Snyder and Associates for design services relative to various intersection improvements. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Over for Councilmember DeBurr. You asked to bring it forward.
Yeah, I wanted to know if there were other professionals considered to do this, or why it didn't go to public bid. It's $377,000, just under.
I can answer that, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
I may defer to the city engineer, David, but early on in the year, requests for qualifications go out to multiple different consultants. There's kind of a few different ways to do it. But in this case, it went out to multiple different consultants. They were divided into different categories, whether it's transportation, stormwater, and then we'll have a list of 3 to 4 qualified contractors in that criteria, and it depends on the consultant's workload is kind of how it's determined on which consultant would be selected. So at the beginning of the year, they kind of get that qualified list together. So I don't know if David wants to add anything to that, but.
Sure. What I'll just add on to that is that from that pre-qualified list of consultants that we have, we do like an internal review of the consultants that we have determined as a pre-qualified consultant. And as Chase said, we look at what current contracts they have with the city, what their current workload is, what their capabilities are to be able to do the specific project that we are doing, in this case, these intersection improvements, and what that consultant's background and history is with doing those types of projects. So that's how we determined the consultant.
So how many consultants are in this pool of available to choose?
So we have a list of 4 pre-qualified consultants. And that was from a qualification process that we did, that we asked for pre-qualifications from, I think we sent out to over a dozen different consultants. And that's how we took all those pre-qualifications and narrowed it down to these 4.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly, Councilmember Cruz.
So then 4 consultants for streets, is that as opposed to the stormwater? Or am I saying 4 for all of those categories you mentioned? Or, just curious.
It'd be for most of our projects that we have in-house. If it's a bigger project, such as like I'll use Main Street reconstruction as an example, a bigger, more complex project, then we'll go out with an RFP process for that and select our consultant based on requests for proposals.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Spriggy? Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Cyrus.
I have a question for Dave. How much of our own engineering do we do ourselves? What's the percentage of that?
I couldn't tell you a percentage off the top of my head, but I can tell you like all of our local street reconstruction, our street restoration projects, various other, like all of our sidewalk projects, seal coat projects, various other projects we all do in-house because we have the staff and capability to do so. If I had to put a percentage on it, it would probably fall somewhere 30, 40%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council on this item? Any from the public? Seeing none? Then it's been motioned and seconded to approve and authorize execution of a professional service agreement with Snyder and Associates for design services relative to various intersection improvements and requires a roll call vote.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Clerk. And looking forward into item 28 is allowing bills and claims for December 20th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any council questions or discussion on this? Any from the public? Okay, it's motion and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have any city council referrals tonight? I don't see any in the packet. Yes,
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor.
O'Donnell.
So I would like to make a referral for, I believe it would be, maybe be a work session would be appropriate. With you and I being our biggest employer in our city, that's still a good calculation, right, as far as I know. I would like to learn, and I'm sure my fellow council persons would like to learn, maybe get a little update from the University of Northern Iowa. So I would propose or move for a work session for you and I presentation on their economic development priorities.
Okay. So economic development priorities for the city to take part in, or economic development
No,
priorities?
I would like you and I to come here and give us a presentation on their economic development.
I just want to be clear, like, for staff, are you looking for it to be that we want to know what they want the city to do, or that we want to find out just what UNI is doing?
Yeah, kind of like similar to Grow Cedar Valley, when they come in and give their presentation on what,
Okay.
yes. So
All right.
what they're doing, yes.
Okay. So it's been motioned to have a request a work session with UNI as a presentation on what their economic development priorities are, knowing that we can't force them to do it, but
No,
to
but I
invite
would
them to
like
attend.
them to be invited. I think it's good to,
Okay, does that make sense? As a motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and seconded. Any further discussion from council on this? Questions? Councilmember Harding?
I guess I would say I'm completely open to having a work session with UNI and talking with them. That's a huge aspect of our city. Why limit it to just economic development? Why not just a general work session with them to present and talk with us about how can we partner together and work together? What is UNI looking at? How can we just open that door? I guess ultimately it seems like a good idea, but is it possibly too narrow in scope? Does
oh,
that
I'm
make sense?
okay with, if we want to broaden it. I just
Okay.
think that I've been sitting in this role for, I don't know, a little over a year, and it'd be nice to have some conversation with the university that's so important to our community.
So,
I agree.
Councilor Harding, would you like to motion an amendment to change that from an economic development discussion to a general discussion?
I would like to amend it to a work session, a joint work session with UNI.
Yeah, unless you're willing to withdraw and restate it as general.
I guess I'm okay with an amendment. I just want to make sure that the economic priorities part is included in whatever is brought forth, or at least requested from our
So what if we make an amendment to have a work session with UNI to collaborate that includes some of their economic development ideas in the future?
Okay, including economic development.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, so is there a second to that amendment, just to
Second.
broaden it? Okay,
Second.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion on the amendment?
I was just wondering if the intention might be to include their plans for increasing enrollment or that sort of thing, because that's an economic component of the function of a university. You got to have the
I think
enrollment
that'd be,
to have the.
I feel like these folks that are going to come and present, I bet that it would be on there. I mean, these are professionals. I'm quite certain they'll be able to come and give us a fabulous presentation on what they're doing. So, yeah, I would assume that that probably would be brought up.
okay.
That's what I'd like to see, is the enrollment component.
So I think that could be included in the language for what
Yeah.
generally Councilor Harding was looking for. Councilmember DeBerg?
What is the expectation from staff on this? What are you expecting the staff to do?
What do you do when Grow Cedar Valley shows up and gives us a presentation? I guess I don't have any expectation other than we're facilitating a space for them to come and speak to us as the council in Cedar Falls.
And the other half of that question I was going to say is, have you talked to UNI about whether they want to even do this?
Yes, I have. I met with them last week.
Okay.
I mean, let me jump in
Right.
real quick. I think, obviously, yeah, to have a conversation, we need two parties, and you and I would, hopefully be willing to do that. But I think it's just good to open the door up and have that communication and throw that out there to them. Either way, they're a huge part of our community, and us talking and working together is never going to be a bad thing. So yeah, either way, just wanted to say that. I think we should definitely talk to them.
Okay, so I propose we vote on the amendment now. So is the motion's on the floor and the second for the amendment to make it a general discussion. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that takes us back to the original motion. That would be the work session with UNI in the fairly near term in order to talk about their economic development priorities and collaborate generally on issues of mutual concern.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think Grow Cedar Valley is a committee meeting, isn't it? When they present?
When it's a presentation, that's a committee of the whole meeting. And
So-
they basically just present and we ask a few questions, which would be different
As
from a work
opposed,
session.
if it's going to be informational and we're getting feedback, would we not want it as a committee meeting as opposed to a workshop? Just semantics, maybe?
Well, I would say that's not semantics, because when you're in a work session, I would think that wouldn't be in the council chambers. It would be a much more,
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
discussion, and there's not like,
There's no
Robert
motions and no voting.
yeah.
So I'm comfortable starting with the work session and seeing if we need to make
What,
some
just curious.
decisions afterward.
And then, based on that, maybe they could come forward with a more formal something in committee of the whole if needed. Okay, so motion and seconded. Any other final discussion on this for this general discussion
We
in
already,
a work session?
didn't we already voted, right?
We only voted to change. so now
Oh,
we have to
change
vote.
the amendment. I got it. Gotcha.
So this
Sorry.
is as amended.
Gotcha.
So motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will have that work session. We'll have to figure out timing with you and I, what works for them. But yeah, certainly as we're working through our priorities and figuring out how we can best support you and I, the sooner the better. So with that, any other referrals tonight? Seeing none, then I'll open it for council updates. And with that, since this is our last meeting of the year and we're moving into a new term, this will be Councilmember Dara's and Councilmember Miller's final meeting with us for tonight. Councilmember Dara having 38 years with us in public service on various boards and commissions, including City Council, and Councilmember Miller with 8 years, with 2 terms on City Council. So I'd want to offer that opportunity to you for some parting words and wisdom for us. So Councilmember Miller, if you'd like to start.
You let me go before Frank. That's terrific. Yeah, last meeting, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody, to the public, for the opportunity, for the feedback, these votes aren't always the easiest, and it's great to hear from people, and I hope everybody continues to be involved and offer their input to the new councilperson-elect, Gil Schultz. I think he's got great capability to see different sides to things, and I hope everybody does contact him. To staff, thank you for being professionals and doing your jobs. You guys have a tough job as well, and I appreciate having all of the different sides to make my decisions with, and we're hearing from the public, we're hearing from staff, we're taking all this information and putting it together and trying to make the right move forward. And I've appreciated the wealth of knowledge along the way. And to the public, again, thank you for the opportunity to serve. It's been an honor, and one of the neatest things I've been a part of, from just getting elected. The campaign crew that I worked with when I first got elected, it was an outstanding experience. And sitting up here and learning every week, all the different variables of trying to help run a city, it's been an honor. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Dara.
Yeah, thank you. I echo Mark's comments as far as thanking the public for supporting me and supporting and participating in decisions that the council has made over the years. I thank fellow council members present and past. I've learned a lot from everybody. Despite the rancor of the last couple of years, I think generally the community, unless I'm terribly mistaken, is quite proud of itself. We have a lot to be proud of. I've had very little to do with it. I've been around a long time, but where we are now has been a result of hard work by many council members, but most specifically our city staff. Mark has already alluded to city staff, but as long as I've been here, I quoted earlier this evening our former city administrator, that it is our city staff that makes Cedar Falls what it is. We sit up here and have grand ideas. Some of them are better than others, but it's the staff that turns it into reality. They are the professionals that are trained to do this, and we would not be where we are, including having a AAA bond rating, thanks to Jennifer Rodenbeck. And I didn't want to start naming names because there's too many people to thank, but couldn't get by without saying that to Jennifer. And Jackie Danielson for keeping the council on task. And I get a sense that she's kind of the heartbeat of City Hall. And I hope as citizens and as council, as you go forward, you'll remember it is the staff that has made Cedar Falls what it is. We come up with the ideas, they got to make them reality. So thanks for a great opportunity, and I just look forward to seeing Cedar Falls get better every year. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dara. With that, do we have any other city council updates for tonight? Okay, seeing none, then for Ron, do you have any updates for us you want to share?
No, sir.
Okay, we did have a question from a resident earlier. I thought it might be worth asking since if there's questions about 18th and Main, how there are trees being felled there. And if Director Shoggy, you just give us a quick synopsis of what's happening out there.
So currently, we have some city staff members out there working on the drainage culvert, which goes under Main Street. We have over 65 bridges and large culverts that we maintain each year. Part of that maintenance includes the clearing of dead and invasive species of trees, and also the cleaning of the box culvert itself and any sediment that is in there. So currently, we're removing some trees to be able to get down to the culvert and do that maintenance work.
Okay, thank you. So just know for the public, trees are very important to us as a city, and we do want to preserve as many as we can and plant as many as we can too. So with that, without additional staff updates, I would just say, again, last meeting of the year. I wish everybody a wonderful holiday season with your family and friends, and enjoy the time that we have off. Our next meeting will be January 3rd, and I'll be cozied up to the fire with Robert's Rules of Order, and I hope you'll do the same. It's a wonderful book. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Good.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Happy holidays.